Tosei and Bandai are really determined to squeeze those last few drops out of the Famicom, aren't they? In the case of Crayon Shin-Chan, Ora to Poi Poi, they went the extra mile and made it part of a failed experiment to stretch out that lifespan. Crayon Shin-Chan had just barely gotten started in Japan when this game was released, but it's been running continuously for over 30 years at this point. It's about a crude little boy who keeps getting into trouble. It's never managed to catch on in the US, though there have been multiple tries. The subtitle, Ora to Poi Poi, is pretty much meaningless. Don't worry about it. In fact, it carries so little meaning that I would trim it, except for the fact that there's many games called Crayon Shin-Chan. This Crayon Shin-Chan game is a puzzle game. Shin-Chan is going around being a jerk to everybody, and eventually getting them involved in his puzzle game, and then after he beats them, he's a jerk to them again. The way the puzzle works is this. Both players are lined up on opposite sides of the field. Every row has one brown block in it, and they start out in the middle. The goal is to get that brown block all the way over to your opponent's side. Alternatively, you have a certain piece count at the bottom of your screen, and if you can eliminate that many pieces, then you win. Pieces come out in pairs, and you can flip them by pressing the B button. You move them up and down, and throw them ahead of you by pressing A. Your goal is to match the symbol. If a piece hits its twin from behind, then it pushes the brown block in that direction, and the piece that you threw vanishes. If it connects to the side, then both pieces vanish, and everything falls forward. This doesn't make brown blocks move, but it can cause a chain reaction, and that can make them move. Create a big enough chain reaction, and instead of getting your next pieces, you'll get stars. And stars will wipe out all of the pieces on your side of the brown block, as well as shove those blocks 2 squares towards your opponent. When your own pieces start approaching your side, they'll get erased when they cross your line. And since hitting a brown block on its own with anything will shove it one, if a block gets right on top of you, you can shove it away like that. There are 3 ways to play Crayon Shin-Chan. There's the story mode, which isn't much of a story, and there's 4 modes in it. A single match where you can set the parameters, and a 2-player mode. If you choose the story mode, you have your choice of 4 difficulty options, and each difficulty option has you fight 3 different people in a row. Even clearing a single difficulty level isn't really a story, since everyone seems to have their own little story with Shin-Chan. If you're beaten by an opponent in story mode, then you can continue the game, but you can only do that 3 times on each difficulty level. The Famicom cartridge isn't the only format that Bandai released this game in. They also made it into a Detach cartridge. The Detach Joint ROM system was an add-on for the Famicom that plugged into the cartridge slot, and then you'd plug other cartridges into that. The idea was to offload some common hardware to the Detach module, and thus make the games cheaper for people. Crayon Shin-Chan is the only dual release like this for Detach. The other games that Bandai made for it were exclusive to that platform. The Detach version cost 2,600 yen, about half the price of the Famicom version. And despite the fact that the Detach module had additional hardware, including a barcode scanner, the 2 versions are identical. So only an idiot would buy a box copy of the Detach version in order to compare the 2 releases. In Japan, this game got a little bit of attention for being a Crayon Shin-Chan game, but the license seems to be the only notable thing for Japanese fans. I myself found the puzzle game to be kind of annoying. Because your pieces take a second or 2 to reach the tiles that you're aiming at, you could find that the stack that you were working on has suddenly shifted because your opponent hit it first. And it's really hard to finish someone off, because if the bricks reach their side, then they can always just shove it back 1 with no effort. Your best bet to take someone out is to get the bricks close to them, and then use stars to push them across the line. But beyond that, the geometry shifts too fast to make reasonable plans, and you're better off just throwing things out there where you might think they could kind of work, instead of plotting out some mastermind maneuver. The size of the board doesn't help there. Having a lot of pieces out on the board means that small moves can change a lot. Crayon Shin-Chan Ora to Poi Poi is pretty mediocre, which, now that I think about it, is the quality of all of the Crayon Shin-Chan games from the 90s.